Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. Today, answering the question that many of you have been asking for quite some time since 10.0 dropped: how are the American Battleship Secondaries for the secondary American battleships? So this is what I like to call the what should have been the American tech tree split. So the Massachusetts, the Georgia, and the Ohio. Before, their secondaries were quite good, but in a different way from the Germans. The American secondary batteries used to, for those of you that played before 10.0, which I'm sure is just about everybody here, you know that the American battleship secondaries used to be quite fearsome. Not because of the good pens and the good range like the German secondaries, but because of their sheer rate of fire and accuracy. You can go look at my channel. There's plenty of videos of Massachusetts, Georgia, and Ohio here on the channel with full secondary builds. Those are some of my favorite ships. Well, they were some of my favorite ships. We'll get more in that in a moment. But back in the day, well, not even back in the day, back a couple of weeks ago before 10.0, they were some of my favorites, some of my most played ships in the game. And I haven't been playing them as much recently because of the changes. And yeah, it's kind of sad to say, but I think between the three nations that you could build into their secondaries, the US BBs, the premium ones, have been hit the hardest by the rework. Now, that's not to say that they're bad, they're just nowhere near as good as they used to be. And the only nation I'd say would be hit harder than them is France, quite frankly, because now you just don't have a lot of reasons to build into secondary guns in the French line. Not like the whole line was a viable secondary line, but the Alsace and the Republic certainly were. And now it's like, yeah, they're just not accurate enough to really do much anymore, sadly. But that's a different video for a different day. Now, the American battleships, you guys should know that before they were ungodly accurate. I called them a laser because all the secondary guns would pretty much go in the exact same spots. Not like the GK, even when before the rework, the secondary shells would be splashing all over the place, and they would still be fairly accurate, but it's more of an accuracy through volume, whereas the American battleship secondaries were just downright accurate. They had a good fire rate, they had a good accuracy rate, and they also had a good chance of starting a fire, really good chance of starting a fire, and they still do today. That has not been affected by the rework. They still have a 9% chance of starting a fire on guns that now reload in 2.4 seconds. And before, they reloaded in I think it was 2.5. I think it was either 2.4 or 2.5. It sounds about the same from my memory. They fired extremely fast, had a very nice chance of starting a fire, but they don't really have that great of pins on them, which was fine because their fire chance is so good. You don't really need to pin 32 millimeters of armor. As long as you're hitting the ship, you have a chance to start a fire on the ship. You know, as long as you hit the deck area of the superstructure, at least. Now, if you're hitting the armor belt, obviously your chances of fire go down extremely high because, well, there's no way to start a fire there. At least from how it works, it should be, but it sure feels like, you know, you get a random thonk here and there on the bow, and then boom, your ship's on fire. But anyway, that is what made them good. Now, today, you should be seeing footage of the Ohio on screen right now. There's actually a really darn good game in Ohio. They are not as accurate as they used to be. They are, like I said when I was talking about the German battleships, they are about on par with the Germans now in terms of accuracy. They both have a similar accuracy rate. As you can see, the shells are going all over the screen. They are hitting, but it's certainly not what they used to be. There's a couple of clips in here where I get within the secondary range of a destroyer, and it's just not connecting as much as it should be. Like, I won't say at all, but it's just, I remember, you know, a DD pulls up next to you in Ohio, and you got your secondaries trained on them, and they're ripping, and you just heard that ribbon hit noise, that sound effect every time you get a secondary battery hit. You just heard it constantly in the Ohio, the Georgia, the Massachusetts. But now you don't. It's like, it just sounds weird, you know, seeing that image, having my secondary set on him, and I'm not hearing that hit noise because the shells aren't connecting as often. Now, If they're not maneuvering, they will connect quite easily, of course, or if they're going slow, if their engine's broken, or something like that, yeah. But if the dude's got a brain and isn't maneuvering, he's going to manage to avoid most of the secondary guns, which wasn't really the case beforehand. I mean, you could mitigate the damage by moving, but they were really just drilling on these destroyers, and light cruisers too, for that matter, because 21 millimeters of armor, you can pin most light cruisers with the Ohio for sure, and she was quite good at it. And of course, the 457 millimeter guns help out with that as well. And of course, this captain you're seeing right now, he's full secondary build, all the new secondary skills, all secondary modules. I'm just missing the superintendent for battleships, whatever it's called, the skill that only gives you one more repair party. So in other regards, against heavy cruisers and against battleships, it's about the same actually, because you weren't pinning them for any damage beforehand, you were just hitting them very often and setting a lot of fires. Now, of course, because the dispersion's a bit all over the place, it's slightly less efficient, but when you're fighting a battleship, it's freaking huge. You're going to land most of your hits regardless, because of the size of the thing that you're shooting at. Unless you're shooting at something that's like a really low profile, like Petropavlovsk, you're going to land most of your hits. So it's still worth building into, in my mind, on these ships especially that were designed for this, but it's just not as good as it used to be. And would it be worth it running Deadeye on the Georgia and Ohio and Massachusetts? Because of how good Deadeye is, the answer is probably so. But the secondaries are still there. They're just not as good as they used to be, which is very painful to say. And that's something that was brought up in yesterday's video, how the rework really gave sniper players a whole lot of useful, well, not a whole lot of useful tools, but one really useful tool in Deadeye, whereas the secondary players, or the brawler players, really got shafted. I mean, yeah, our secondaries can fire on both sides of the ships now, which actually does happen in this game, and does prove to be fairly useful, but still, they're less efficient. At the end of this match you're watching right now, my Ohio fired, I believe the grand total was 1,090 secondary shells. Let me pull that screen up real quick. Yes, 1,040 secondary shells. Only 290 landed. Now, 290 is a good number, don't get me wrong, but if this was pre-10.0 Ohio, even with the other half of the ship not firing that moment that I'm engaging the FDG and the Vermont, I'm fairly confident I would have beat that number. I'm fairly confident that I'd say about 400 to 500 shells would have landed, even if we don't get the double sides firing, just because of how accurate those guns used to be. It's still fun, don't get me wrong. My confidence has been restored in Ohio and the other US BBs because of this. I wasn't playing them a lot before because I'm like, God, how's this going to work now, with these secondaries being less accurate and the way the game is played. They can still handle themselves in this situation when they can get into this brawling situation, but of course with Deadeye and all, we know that it's just, we don't get into brawls as much anymore, sadly. Now, of course, Deadeye's probably going to get nerfed, or something's going to change. I hope so, Wargaming. But is it still safe to spec into these secondary ships, these secondary American battleships? Absolutely. It still is. Because it's still fun. And that's what matters at the end of the day. If you're going to go super sweaty and go into competitive, should you take a secondary build? Probably not. Honestly, if you're going to competitive, your team already knows what you need to build into anyway. But it's still fun. It still makes me giggle too. When I was engaging the FDG in the Vermont, even though I wasn't landing as many shells, I can't lie, I cracked a smile because of what was going on. It's just that ridiculous fire rate on both sides. It was fun. I was having fun. One of the rare times I was having fun in 10.0, not just sitting in the back, trying to blap a ship from across the map. But anyway, at the end of the day, they're still good, just not as good as they used to be. Which, again, like I mentioned earlier, does very much hurt me to say. Also, a fun thing to do if you are one of us and like to brawl. The hilarious thing about Deadeye is, because it makes the dispersion so good, some people are struggling to aim. I mentioned this earlier. I'm one of those people too, by the way. Because the way battleships used to work is that, okay, I see he's going about there, so I'll aim up around here. About half the salvos should hit him. Well, since the guns are so accurate now, your shells are landing in a smaller area, so you can't kind of just shotgun it like you used to. You have to be more precise. So that means you have to aim for a smaller area to hit, rather than, saying, okay, I know I got about, my dispersion should spread my shells over about the length of his ship, so I can still land most of my hits. So now they can't do that because the dispersion, especially on something like the Yami with legendary mod and stuff, it's so small now that they have to be more precise. So that means these long-range salvos are ironically easier to dodge as long as you're moving. I think you guys should have seen a couple examples of that at the start of this match, where I'm in the Ohio and I just get detected, see the Vermont, wait a couple seconds, he fires, slam my rudder one way, and his shells just land like just short of my ship because I turned in time. Whereas if he probably didn't have Deadeye, they probably would have, a couple of them probably would have connected, but it's like, nope, I'm gonna go over here and then your shells are gonna miss, then I'm gonna come back around and your shells are gonna miss again. It's hilarious to watch. Also, what is hilarious to do is, by the way, you can do this in a DD or a cruiser or even a battleship. Just run at these Deadeye BBs and watch them run, trying to preserve their Deadeye. They're all just like, nope, 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 need my Deadeye, need my Deadeye. It's hilarious to watch. So yeah, that's some ways you can have fun in this update. Anyway, guys, just wanted to cover that subject with you guys, that you guys know at least what my experience has been with these American secondary builds still. Let me know what you guys have been seeing in the comments down below. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday? Yes, Wednesday. That's when this video should be coming out. Hope you guys are having a great Wednesday. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way now to 25,000 subs. We just passed 22,000 not that long ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Again, hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.